Do you still have a chance? Should you be persistent? Should you keep pursuing her? Or has she totally lost interest? In this video, we're going to talk about 5 signs that it's time to move on and walk away. Hi, I'm Bobby Rio, and I deal with clients every single day, and I've dealt with this personally in my own life, where somebody meets a girl and things go really well, and then all of a sudden things aren't going well anymore, right? She's pulled back her interest, her texts have slowed down, she's kind of busy all the time, and a lot of times at that point there is the ultimate dilemma that we have as guys. Is this girl worth pursuing? Can I salvage this, right? Because a lot of times we really like her. A lot of times there was a lot of good moments there. Maybe we went on a few dates and the chemistry was just intense and we're like, wow, I can totally see a future with this girl. And then all of a sudden something happens and we don't know if she's just, doesn't want to tell us, right? She doesn't want to hurt our feelings. So she's kind of giving us, the slow fade where she's hoping we get the point. Now, at what point do you actually say enough is enough, it's time to move on? Like I said, I have clients dealing with this all the time. They come to me in these sort of situations, and a lot of times the situation is salvageable. A lot of times I have to tell them it's time to take a step back. So when is it time to take a step back? Let's go through 5 signs that I look for. The number 1 sign, and this is more of an internal thing, right? The number 1 sign it's time to take a step back is when you are in something that I call emotional quicksand, right? So emotional quicksand, and we've all been there, right, is when you get totally obsessed with a girl and she's all you can think about. She's all you want to talk to your friends about. You're staring at your phone 24/7 hours a day, 24 days a week. You're just all you can freaking think about is her, and it's affecting every other part of your life. You're just like laying in bed, wondering what to do. You're replaying every conversation you had with her, trying to figure out what you did wrong. Why is it not working? What can I do? And I call it emotional quicksand because you're sinking, right? And the problem is when you're sinking, your emotions have completely taken over, and they never make the right decisions for you. When you're in this state, it's almost impossible to get a girl back. That's why when you're in it, the best thing you can do is take a step back because you are going to mess things up. I promise you, I've seen it all the time. I get clients who come to me and their situation is salvageable from the standpoint of she hasn't totally lost interest, but their mindset is so warped and they're so obsessed with the situation, and that even when we come up with a really good plan, the next time I talk to them, they've done the complete opposite of everything I've said, right? They're like, yeah, I know what you said, but then I emailed her and then she didn't email me back, so I sent her 5 more emails and then I texted her 3 times, and then when she didn't respond, I sent her a big bouquet of roses to her work, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't tell you to do any of that. Where did any of that come from? And a lot of that is that it's our emotions, right? I always say your emotions are like a wimpy virgin whispering advice in your ear. Text her again. Maybe her phone is broke. Like, you never make the right decision. You never do the right thing when you are taken over by your emotions. So when you're in emotional quicksand, even if she agrees to meet up with you, right, you're going to mess it up, right? Because you're going to get in front of her and you're going to be a shell of your former self. So there's no good that can come of even pursuing her at that point. You need to take a step back. Now, does that mean that it's going to be never with her? You're going to have to say goodbye to her forever? No. But it means at this point, you got to dust yourself off. You got to recompose yourself. You got to put your attention elsewhere so that when you do interact with her again, you're thinking with a clear head. You're not thinking with your wimpy virgin whispering advice in your ear. So now, what are some signs that you might get from her that it's time to move on? So one of the things that I always say is a surefire sign that you have very, very, very little chance with her of rekindling things is when you're hanging out with her, when she does agree to see you, and then you go to touch her and she recoils like you're her creepy uncle making a move on her, right? See, what happens with women, it's a little different than with men, right? With men, if we find a woman attractive physically, there's not a lot she can do for us to then become repulsed by her, right? Even if we see that she's batshit crazy, there's still a part of us that would be like, she puts her hand on me, it's gonna turn us on because we're very visual. We are just, that's just how we were built, right? Women were built completely different. So when a woman, when you do certain things that lose her attraction, right? When you make a lot of the mistakes, like, becoming really needy around her and insecure, maybe you did the things that I mentioned previously where you're sending her 20 text messages and you're confessing your feelings and all of a sudden, you were like this kind of cool guy in her eyes, right? She went on a few dates with you. She was having fun with you. Then you do all these things and now you're like, she pities you, right? And then what's even worse is when you're not getting the point, right? A lot of guys go, if I can just get her out, things will be okay. If I can just see her in person. And they kind of bulldoze their way into getting another meetup with her. The problem is when she sees you at this really low state, right? Where she's kind of looking down on you and she, you've lost any respect that she had for you. When you get in front of her, there's not much you can do, right? And like I said, it's over when you go to touch her and you get that that shiver, like where she's just disgusted by you. Now, we can debate all day of, why is she like that? Why are women like that? It's wrong, but it's just the way it is, right? And when you get that, you're working from so much of a low point. I tell my clients this all the time, right? I'm like, it's, when you come to me, you'll come to me before you totally mess up because I can help you 90% of the time. But when you come to me where she's disgusted by you, I'm starting from a very tough position to change things for you, right? And when you get to that point where she doesn't even want you touching her, you're at a very low point. At that point, again, it's better to walk away. Sometimes she comes around, right? Sometimes she's like, the initial shock of the mistakes you made kind of wears off and she kind of comes to her senses of, he was a good guy. But she's got to come to that on her own, right? There's a movie, Swingers, and one of the best lines, there's so many good lines in that movie. One of my favorite lines when they're talking about getting a girl to come back, he says to him, there's nothing you can do to make her want to come back. There's only things you can do to make her not want to come back, right? And it's really true. You've probably experienced it at some time where the minute you actually moved on, she comes back. But the more you're trying to get her back, the more you're actually pushing her away. So the next sign that you should move away and move on is when she disrespects you, right? And we kind of mentioned that when a woman loses respect for you, she becomes almost repulsed by you. And what happens in those sort of situations is she begins to act really shitty, right? A lot of times I get a client who I'm working with and he starts telling me about this woman and he's like, I really want her. And he explains the situation and I'm like, this woman is a complete bitch, right? She's just, everything she's treating you like you're like an animal, right? Like, why would you even want to go back with this girl? And a lot of times it's because their self-respect is so low, their self-worth, their self-esteem. She's just crushed it to the point where it's like they just want to get her back. I call it like chasing the loss, right? Because in gambling, there's a concept of chasing the loss. And it's like when you're winning and you're up in gambling, it feels really good. You got a lot of endorphins and a lot of chemicals that are making you feel really good. And then you start losing. And even though you logically know, I should walk away from the table, I'm losing everything, you just keep gambling because you're trying desperately to get that good feeling back. And a lot of times with guys, they're so beaten down by her and they just want her back just to boost their self-esteem again, just so they don't feel like, oh my God, this woman hates me. Like they don't even want her back. They just want her to view them in a good way back so that they don't have to feel those negative emotions anymore. But the thing is that when a woman's disrespecting you, first off, is she's lost respect for you. And this happens. I had a girl once. She was a female friend of mine, and I was in emotional quicksand with her. We had hooked up, and then all of a sudden she kind of pulled back and was like, oh, we shouldn't do this. And of course, I made every mistake in the book, right? I sent the flowers, I sent the text, I did all that sort of stuff. And then I could see that she was totally losing respect for me. And one day she even sends me a text. I get a text from her, and I'm all happy because I see her name, and I'm, oh my God. And the text was like, if you tell anybody about us, what happened between us, I'll never talk to you again. So in my mind, I was like, that was just like the low, like, who are you to say that to me, right? And that was the moment where I said, fuck off, right? And I walked away. Because when somebody loses respect for you, you have to maintain your dignity, because what's going to happen inevitably with every situation is, no matter how good you think this girl is, no matter how right you think this girl is, another girl comes along who's even better. It happens every time. It happens for me. It happens for all of my clients. And you want to be mentally ready for that. And if you let a woman beat you down with like just treating you like garbage, where she's just like, you're texting her things and she's not responding, and she's like, canceling plans, and she says, and she's just totally treats you with such a lack of respect that it gets ingrained in you. You begin to feel worthless. And it makes it really hard to go out there and get back in the game with other women when you have that negative self-image that she's kind of creating, right? And a lot of times, listen, it's not always the girl's fault. A lot of times you made mistakes. You weren't, I'm not blaming her, right? I'm not blaming you. It's just how it is. But the best thing to do when you sense that you're getting disrespected by somebody is to put your foot down, to have personal boundaries, right? I have another video on my channel about displaying personal boundaries. Because when somebody sees that they can get away with things, it's almost impossible for them to then respect you. So you have to have boundaries. You have to let her know, like, I am willing to walk away. I will walk away, and I just walked away, right? She's got to see that. So if you're getting disrespected, it's a sign it's time to walk away. Next one. Other guy, right? So a lot of times what happens, and this is always one of the worst conversations I have to have with a client, because he'll come to me and he'll be like, things were going really well with this girl. She was talking about, taking a vacation with, everything was great. And then all of a sudden she just pulled back. What happened, right? And he's like, and a lot of times when I work with a client, they start telling me all the things they did. Well, I said I loved you after 2 weeks. And I'm like, well, that's why she pulled back. You can't do that, right? But sometimes there really wasn't anything they did wrong. Everything they did was, I'm like, unless you're leaving things out, you didn't really make any mistakes. So what happened, right? Well, a lot of times what happened is another guy popped in the picture. Sometimes it's an ex-boyfriend. Sometimes it's just a guy who has more proximity to her, right? He works with her, he's in her social scene and you're not. So he has the advantage, and it's really hard to compete with that. If you met a girl off Tinder and you guys are in completely different social scenes, and this guy's in her social scene, and the only thing you have to work with is text, it's really hard to compete. So when you sense that a girl is with somebody else, a lot of times it is time to walk away. The timing is off. It doesn't mean that, like, if you choose to go back with her, a lot of times it ends with that other guy, and she remembers, oh, Joe was really cool. Let me see if he's still around, and you'll get the text from with her. Now, whether or not you say okay and you go back with her, that's your decision. But a lot of times you will get that text. But the reason why I advise walking away when there is another guy in the picture is because, so I teach something called the scrambler, and the scrambler works really, really effective. Because what it does is it gets a woman thinking about you all the time to the point where she begins to convince herself she's in love with you. But the problem is, if there's another guy in the picture and she's thinking about him all the time already, it's really hard for her to be thinking about two guys at once, right? It's just really hard. We can only really become obsessed with one guy at once. So if she's got another guy in her life that she's obsessed with, there's not much you can do, right? You just become annoying to her because she's thinking about this other guy, waiting for him to text, and then you text her, and now she's like, fucking him, like, ugh, why is he texting me, right? Because she's, it's like we've all been there. When we really like one girl and the girl we don't really like is texting us, it's like we almost resent her more because she's not the person we really want. So if you sense that there's another guy in the picture, just back off, right? Go on Tinder yourself, go get some other dates, clear your mind of her for a little bit, enjoy yourself. Listen, it's a really great time to be single right now. It's never been easier in the entire history of the world to meet women, right? You've got all these dating apps, you've got like meetups, like no matter what you're interested in right now, you can go find women interested in it, right? If you're interested in rock climbing, there's groups. If you're interested in business, there's networking. No matter what you're into, you will find girls into that too. So don't stick around and be some puppy dog chasing a girl who's already with somebody. Next sign that it's time to walk away is when you are turning down options, right? So I just mentioned that right now is the easiest time in the world for guys to meet women. Now, it is the easiest to meet women, but it's one of the hardest times to keep a woman's interest because she is also living in a time where it's the easiest time in the world for a girl to meet a guy. It goes both ways, right? So men and women right now have so many options that it's very hard to hold somebody's attention, right? And that's why we always, teach things like the scrambler, which gets her thinking about you all the time, because that's really what you need. If she's not thinking about you all the time, then she's very likely going to be open to swiping right or swiping left or whatever it is on other guys. So you want to make sure that you get her thinking about you. But let's say that's not the case, right? Let's say she's already walking away, it's not working out with her, and you got all these other girls in your life, and you're just not putting your all into them. It's probably a sign to move on from the other girl, because what happens is, and what I find really interesting is, a lot of guys start, studying dating advice, right? They hire me, and they learn a lot of stuff about attraction and, kind of flirting and getting a woman into you and all this sort of stuff. And they waste it on a girl who's already moved on. Now, the interesting thing is, with everything you know now, right, if you've been studying this stuff, when you meet a new girl, it's really, really easy to do the right thing, to make her really into you, because you know what not to do, right? You already made those mistakes on the other girl, right? You're not starting from, like I said earlier, when a client hires me, I'm starting from a really weak position because he's messed up. He's made every mistake in the book. I got to come in, I got to kind of clean up his mess. Well, when you don't have a mess to clean up, things are really, really easy. So why are you turning down other options? I mean, here's the thing, and I told the client this the other day. If a girl is backing off from you, the best thing you can do is date other girls. Because like I said, there's not much you can do to make a girl want to come back to you, but there is one, and that's you actually going and dating somebody else. Because if she sees that, right, if she realizes that oh wow, he really is moving on, oh wow, this other girl is into him, that's like the one thing you can do that almost always gets a girl going, ooh, maybe I shouldn't leave this guy, maybe I shouldn't walk away from this guy. So, emotional quicksand, walk away, right? If she recoils like you're her creepy uncle, walk away. If you feel that she is being repeatedly disrespectful to you, project personal boundaries and walk away. If you find out there's another guy in the picture, walk away. And if you have other options that you are turning down because of her, even though you guys don't even have a physical relationship right now, walk away.